There's a moment you'll never forget, not because it was loud, but because it left you silent. You were accused, labeled, misread, and before you could think, your mouth opened. You tried to explain, tried to defend, tried to show them you were good. But all they saw was someone desperate to be believed, and that was the moment you lost power, because in that instant, you didn't just answer their words, you accepted their authority. You told them their opinion mattered more than your presence, and deep down, even you felt it. That sting, that shrink, the quiet collapse of your image, not in their eyes, but in your own. So the question is, what if you never had to defend yourself again? What if silence didn't mean weakness, it meant war? Let's begin. She stood in front of the cameras, the lights too bright, the silence too loud. Naomi had just been called out, not in private. Not in nuance, but in full view, accused of manipulation, ambition, arrogance. She didn't blink, didn't smile, didn't shift her weight. She just let the words hang, and as reporters leaned in, waiting for a response, she gave them none, not a word. Not a twitch, just a presence that made them question everything. Why didn't she respond? Was it true? Was she guilty, or did she know something they didn't? In that silence, something strange happened. The narrative bent, not because she fought it, but because she never picked it up. The weight of the accusation didn't crush her. It circled back and landed on the accuser. Suddenly, people started asking, why does he sound so emotional? Why is he pushing this so hard? Is this personal? What Naomi did that day wasn't passive. It was a mirror, a sharp one. She let his energy bounce back at him until it cracked his own mask. And that's the first power shift. You don't defend, you let them drown in their own momentum. Because the louder they speak, the more the room listens to their tone, not their words. It's not about being right, it's about holding the frame. Most people speak to survive the moment, but the Machiavellian speaks only when it rewrites the scene. And Naomi, by saying nothing, made everyone say something else. Here's what they don't teach you. Power isn't in proving your version. It's in making them doubt theirs. Silence isn't retreat, it's redirection. And the longer you let them talk, the more they look like the ones trying to convince. That's how you start to win without a fight. Not by speaking louder, but by choosing when not to speak at all. Because when you do that, they don't hear weakness, they feel danger, and danger makes people hesitate. Let's keep going. It happened during a live Q&A. Miles, the CEO of a rising tech company, was on stage. The crowd was sharp, young, skeptical, and the first question cut deep. Your leadership style seems controlling. Some say toxic. How do you respond to that? He didn't flinch, didn't laugh, didn't look down. He paused, leaned back, and said nothing. For 5 full seconds, the room waited. It felt like forever, and then he tilted his head, looked straight into the crowd, and said, if that's how they see it, that was it. No defense, no elaboration, no justification. The air shifted. You could feel it, not because he won the crowd, but because he never gave the crowd a fight. And in that stillness, something more powerful emerged, a new frame, not of guilt, but of command. Because here's the truth, most people believe that speaking is action, but silence is presence. It doesn't beg to be understood. It doesn't seek validation, it asserts without asking, and it terrifies the ones who need chaos to feel important. Miles knew this. He didn't react. He let the audience do the reacting, and what they saw wasn't a man hiding, it was a man unbothered. And in today's world, being unbothered is rarer than brilliance. People confuse silence with weakness because they don't understand control. Real control isn't what you say, it's what you choose not to, the moment you speak from defense. You've handed them the frame, you're in their world, on their terms, explaining yourself inside their narrative. But when you stay still, when you let the discomfort simmer, you become the story, not the suspect. And the mind of the crowd starts working against itself. Why didn't he react? Does he know something we don't? Maybe the question was unfair, and now the accuser is on trial, not you. That's what silence does. It shifts weight. It moves judgment. It poisons the blade before it ever touches you. Most people speak because they are uncomfortable. But the Machiavellian, he waits, because he knows one thing: the longer you hold your stillness, the more the room burns for an answer, and sometimes you don't have to give it, because presence is already the answer. Let's move forward. Avery didn't defend herself, she redefined the terms. When a viral thread accused her of being fake, self-absorbed, and manipulative, she didn't post a clarification, didn't write a long caption, didn't say a word. She posted a photo, one line: authenticity is a choice, not a performance. And then she logged off. The crowd went wild, not with anger but confusion, because she didn't play the role they assigned her. They wanted her to explain, to justify, to shrink. Instead, she rewrote the script. And that's the lesson most people never learn. If you don't control the frame, you get framed. Every time you react on their terms, you lose yours. You enter their courtroom, you argue their charge, and even if you win, you still sat in their chair. But when you hold the frame, you change the entire narrative. Now they have to ask, oh wait, what does that even mean? Is she saying we're all performing? Is she above this? Suddenly, you're not on defense, you're the one forcing reflection. Most people want to be understood, but people who win don't seek to be understood, they seek to be unshakable. Avery didn't care about looking soft or kind or apologetic. She cared about one thing: maintaining the power of presence. Because when people can't pin you down, they respect you more, fear you more, follow you more. When you refuse to validate their script, they're forced to rewrite their own lines, and that's how you flip it. You don't reject the accusation. You replace the story. Someone calls you arrogant. You say, "It's strange how confidence makes people uncomfortable." They say you're cold. You smile. "I prefer clarity to chaos." They say you're fake. You lean in. A real doesn't always look the way you want it to, and none of these are defenses. Their frame shifts. They don't ask for permission. They change the lens, and once the lens changes, everything changes. The one who controls the frame controls the outcome. The one who defines the meaning writes the history. So stop explaining, start defining. Let's go deeper. Tobias was never loud. He didn't chase applause, didn't rush to explain, and yet, when he entered the room, people adjusted their posture, they measured their tone, they listened more carefully, even before he spoke. He wasn't famous, but his presence was. When asked about the accusations that he was too controlling on set, too distant with actors, too detached from the collaborative process, he said only this: good art isn't built by consensus. Then he turned and walked away. And the silence left behind, it echoed louder than any argument, because people didn't just hear him. They felt him, not through emotion, but through restraint. Most people think power comes from passion, from intensity, from expression, but real power lives in stillness. The person who can sit in the storm, unmoved, unshaken, uninterested in chaos. That's the one the world starts to orbit. Calm isn't passivity, it's pressure, applied silently. Tobias wasn't cold. He was clear, he wasn't dismissive, he was uninvested in validation. There's a difference, and it matters. Because people who feel the need to be understood end up explaining themselves to people who were never listening. But the ones who don't care to be understood, they create mystery, and mystery breeds perception, and perception, in this world, is more powerful than proof. Calm detachment is not indifference, it's a boundary. It says, I decide what touches me. And most people, they react because they're afraid of appearing cold, but being warm to everyone makes you forgettable to everyone. Tobias knew this. He cultivated distance, not because he hated connection, but because connection wasn't the goal. Control was, of the moment, of the story, of himself. And when you control yourself, you control the tempo. And when you control the tempo, you control the crowd. Calm is not the absence of feeling, it's the mastery of it. That's why people stared when Tobias was silent. That's why his words landed like iron. Because they weren't trying to win the moment, they were declaring it finished. That's how you shift from reactive to legendary. from emotional to elemental, and that's when power becomes undeniable. Let's keep going. It started with a whisper. One accusation, nothing dramatic, just enough to see doubt. Isla had launched a new campaign. It was bold. Different, too different for some. A former colleague took to social media, implying she'd stolen the concept. No evidence, just tone. Just enough venom to stir the crowd. Everyone expected Isla to fire back. A statement, a thread, a clarification, but she didn't say a word. She kept posting about her work, kept showing up, no reactions, no retweets, no shade. And at first, the crowd leaned into the drama. They wanted to believe something dirty had happened. But then, something strange unfolded. The accuser started repeating herself, reposting, adding screenshots, sounding more desperate, more emotional. And Isla, still silent, still steady. The tide shifted. Suddenly people weren't looking at Isla. They were watching the other woman unravel. What began as a public attack ended as a public collapse, not because Isla fought it, but because she refused to feed it. This is what silence does. It isolates the flame. It deprives the fire of oxygen, and the one who started it gets burned alone. Let them talk. Let them post, let them scream. The more they repeat, the more they reveal. In conflict, energy is everything, and when you don't give them any, they start borrowing from their own, until they overplay, overexpose, overextend, because silence makes people self-destruct. But only when your stillness is intentional. This isn't avoidance, it's strategy. Isla didn't disappear, she stayed visible. But never reactive. She didn't defend her name, she strengthened her presence, and the crowd eventually turned. Not out of loyalty, but out of instinct, because the longer the accuser screamed into the void, the more unhinged she looked, and in contrast, Isla looked untouchable. Here's what most people never understand. Drama needs friction. Without it, it collapses under its own weight, so next time they come for you, don't answer. Don't explain, let the silence stretch. The ones who came to watch a fight will leave when there's no show, and the ones who stay, they'll remember who stayed calm when the fire tried to spread. That's the difference between panic and power. Let's go further. They thought they had you. They said the word with confidence, arrogant, selfish, fake. And they waited for the usual dance, the denial, the soft apology, the frantic scramble to sound humble. But you didn't flinch, you didn't explain, you didn't plead, you just tilted your head and said. Strange how confidence makes people uncomfortable, and suddenly they were on defense because you didn't reject their accusation. You made it theirs. That's the reversal most people never master. They try to clear their name, when they should be revealing the insecurity behind the claim. Someone calls you manipulative, you smile. Only people who can't be influenced say that. They call you fake. Everyone says that when they stop getting what they want. They say you think you're better than them. I don't. I just don't think like them. It's not just a clever line. It's a power judo throw. You're taking their emotional weight and making them carry it, because now they have to explain. They have to clarify. They have to defend why they even said it. And in doing that, they look like the ones with the issue. This is the turn of the blade. You don't block their attack. You let them swing and fall forward on their own momentum. Most people react out of fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being seen as the villain. Fear of losing their image. But power doesn't chase innocence. It flips the narrative. Let's be clear, this isn't cruelty, it's clarity. You're not punishing them, you're just refusing to carry their projection, and the moment you give it back, their story breaks. Because it was never about you, it was about their need to feel bigger by making you smaller. When you don't give them that satisfaction, they shrink in real time. You see it in their eyes. The flicker, the stumble, the quiet panic of someone who realized they've lost control of the room. They thought they could control the story. But you controlled the energy. This is the pivot, where power stops being defensive and becomes declarative. You don't argue truth, you present presence. You don't justify your position, you make it unavoidable. And when people sense that, When they feel the gap between their noise and your stillness, they retreat, not because you beat them, but because you made them look in a mirror they weren't ready to face. That's how you flip it, and that's how you rise. Let's continue. Alina sat at the dinner table, the kind of setting where smiles mask tension. A friend of a friend leaned in with a smirk. You always act like you're above everyone. Laughter followed, polite, tight, waiting for her response. She didn't force a smile, didn't fake a laugh, didn't meet the jab with another. She let the pause hang. The silence wrapped the table. Then, calmly, with no edge, she said, "You seem emotional today." That was it. The conversation moved on. But the moment stayed, because no one remembered the insult. They remembered the stillness. They remembered how she didn't flinch, and how the one who threw the jab suddenly looked small. That's the power of non-reactivity. It doesn't scream strength, it radiates it. When someone tries to humiliate you in public, they're counting on your panic, your embarrassment, your need to fix the scene. But when you stay grounded, you make the attacker feel like the awkward one. You shift the weight without a single raised voice. The crowd always watches the reaction, and the one who holds still controls the story. This isn't about being clever, it's about being immovable. Silence, stillness, calm detachment. These aren't passive tools, they're dominance in disguise, because the moment you try to smooth it over, you validate the insult. You say, "Yes, this hurt. Yes, I want your approval. Yes, I need to be seen the right way." But when you stay still, when your eyes don't flinch, when your tone doesn't rise, you become unpredictable, and unpredictable people make others hesitate. They're not sure if you're offended, or amused, or preparing something worse, and that hesitation, that's fear. Not terror, but caution, and caution is the currency of power. In the digital space, it works the same way. Someone leaves a sarcastic comment. You don't delete it, you don't reply, you don't even like it, you let it sit, and in that void, they start talking to themselves, doubling down, trying harder, and every extra word makes them look smaller. They want a reaction, you give them reflection, and the crowd, they notice. They always notice who broke character and who kept control. You don't need to dominate people, you just need to dominate the energy. That's the true seat of power, quiet, unmoved, always listening, rarely speaking. But when you do, everything stops. Let's keep building. There's a point where they stop coming after you, not because they've changed, not because they finally see your side, but because something else sets in. Doubt. They doubt they'll win. They doubt they'll get a rise. They doubt they'll look strong next to your stillness. That's when your silence becomes myth, because the more you hold it, the more they fill it, with stories, with assumptions, with fear. You haven't said a word, but somehow you've said everything. People start whispering, "She didn't even respond. He never denied it. Oh, maybe he doesn't care because it's beneath him." That's when you realize control isn't about the truth. It's about the tone surrounding it. The calm man in chaos isn't the one people attack. He's the one people look to, even if they won't admit it. Think about the ones who never explain, never post clarifications, never apologize to strangers. They carry something others don't, uncertainty, and uncertainty is terrifying, not because it's vague, but because it makes people hesitate. They can't predict you, they can't frame you, so they fear you. That's where power lies, not in being loved, not even in being feared, but in being unreadable, because if they can't read you, they can't plan against you. And when that happens, you've already won. Your reputation stops being a brand and becomes an atmosphere. You walk into rooms, and people say less, not because they don't have opinions, but because you've taught them. Your silence isn't passive, it's precision. You only speak when the moment demands elevation, not explanation. And when people realize that, they start defending you before you even speak. They correct others. They say, "He's not like that. She doesn't play games." Leave it. That one's different. You didn't ask them to. You didn't campaign for it, but your restraint built it. Every time you didn't react, every insult you let fade, every time you chose presence over panic, You were building that shield, stone by stone, and now you don't need to explain who you are, because they already feel it, not in your words, but in the silence you leave behind. Let's finish strong. You don't win power by reacting. You win it by becoming the kind of person people don't dare provoke. And that takes discipline, not just emotional control, but design, intentional stillness. Selective speech, the refusal to play defense, even when every part of you wants to scream, "I'm not what they say I am." Because here's the truth, if you have to say it, you're already losing. The ones who hold power don't chase understanding. They create distance, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. They've learned this. When you become hard to read, you become impossible to predict. And when they can't predict you, they can't play you. That's where your advantage begins. You don't correct every insult. You don't reply to every post. You don't show up to every argument you're invited to. You hold silence like armor, presence like fire, and every time someone tries to drag you down, they realize the weight they're pulling is themselves. You'll notice something. The more you say nothing, the more others speak for you. Not because you asked, but because your stillness demands a response. That's when you know the game has changed. You don't explain who you are. You define it with your posture, with your gaze, with your timing, with your decision not to fight noise with more noise, because the person who doesn't flinch, that's the person everyone watches. So now, you walk into rooms and say less, you pause longer, you smile smaller, and somehow, you command more. People call it confidence, call it mystery, call it power, but you know what it is. It's choice, not silence by accident, but silence by design. You've moved beyond reaction, beyond defense, into something rarer, definition. You no longer explain, you exist. And in your presence, others begin to rethink their approach, their tone, their energy, because you don't answer to them. You don't even see them as the judge. You've stepped off the stage, and now they're performing for you. And that is the final move, not louder, not softer, but untouchable.